Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the All Systems Go podcast, where we invite startup founders and digital marketers to discuss strategies and softwares to build automated marketing and sales systems at scale. I'm your host, Chris L. Davis, and today I have Pieter de Villiers as a guest, who is the CEO of Macanta. And Pieter was born and raised in South Africa. He's now living in the UK. He is an electrical engineer, as your very own as well. So there's a special place that I have for you, Pieter. And you became he became a certified Infusionsoft certified partner in 2004. Pieter, I became one trailing you probably in 2015. So we probably saw the same type of curriculum. And then you started working with Macanta as an Infusionsoft add-on, became the head of product, and now you are the CEO. And Pieter, everyone, is here today to help us talk about custom CRM automation. All right. I know a lot of you enjoy my podcast on CRM, a lot of you CRM systems, a lot of you are still trying to figure out how to navigate that landscape. What does it look like? So I felt, who better than someone who actually owns some CRM software to come and just help us navigate through this, as well as let us know about your CRM system and some of the holes in the marketplace that it solves. So Pieter, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yes. So I know I've gone through your bio in a sense, but if you could share with us your journey into not necessarily your journey, but your decision making into becoming a CEO of a CRM platform.
Yeah, so I suppose on one level, it is similar to many other decisions that I've made, that it's just, let's see what happens here, rather than necessarily having a very clear long-term plan. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the same when I first moved to the UK. Someone mentioned it. I thought, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And now, 25 years later, I'm still here. So I, like you said, 2014, I had to shut down my electrical contracting business. And in that business, I was using Infusionsoft, but more for process management than anything else.
Yes.
So then when the electrical contracting business failed, I sort of looked around and it's like, well, what am I going to do? What skill set do I have? And I certainly had enough of crawling around in loft spaces and building sites and pulling in cables and that lark. So then I thought, well, actually, I know Infusionsoft quite well, and I know 2 or 3 Infusionsoft partners. So after talking with them, I decided, well, actually, that's what I'm going to do. So became a Infusionsoft partner, and then use that again primarily to help people to set up process and system management and workflow management, rather than necessarily just the sort of email marketing side of things. And then through connections, I met Pieter Daly-Dixon, who actually came up with the original idea of Macanta, which was as an add-on for Infusionsoft, setting out to solve 2 particular problems. One is the Infusionsoft interface of that time was quite complex and overwhelming, and very much a case of, well, when you log in, you see everything. And you have to train your team on what to ignore rather than what to use. So it allows you to, or it did at the time, allowed you to have a customized, simplified interface based on your job role. And then also to solve the one-to-many relationship problem, where, let's say, for instance, you're a vet. I might be your customer, but I have 2 pets. And all the history and record keeping is around the pets, but you need to be able to communicate with me about the pets because I have a relationship to the pet. So whilst I'm your customer, I'm not the consumer of your service or the pets are really,
Yeah. Yeah.
or real estate where I can own 3 properties or have to let out, and there's multiple people involved in a property,
Yep.
sale or rental. It's not just here's a contact, because most CRM systems and Infusionsoft also is contact centric. And you
Yep.
build a campaign. The problem is, fine, the contact goes through the campaign, but what happens when that contact has two of something that needs to be managed? Then fine,
Yes.
custom fields and the like, but you soon run out. It's like, well, how many kids do we allow for? How many pets
Yep.
do we allow for?
Yep.
So that, and then come sort of October, November 2019, we decided to put on our big boy pants and say, well, actually, Macanta doesn't solve Infusionsoft problems. It solves business problems. So we should stand
Mm,
on our own 2 feet. Because by that point, Macanta had become mature enough that where initially Infusionsoft was a great wave for us to ride, it now became a ball and chain when we wanted to implement particular feature sets and things.
yes.
So we abstracted from Infusionsoft and launched Macanta standalone in February 2020. And then around early March 2021, so just over a year ago, the one of the co-founders and Pete, who had the original idea of Macanta, decided to go and pursue other things. By which point I was leading the product team, and decided to take on the whole thing and move it forward from there.
Yeah, so I love the story here because you detailed a major um I'll say a complication in the marketing and sales space, and it's that parent-child relationship. Most CRM systems will allow you to have a parent relationship.
Mm,
Right? But when it comes to children, like you said, hey, look, the parent was good for the initial or and original transaction, but now all of my messaging and everything is really around the child. So if you
yeah.
have 2 pets, I really want to, my communication now is around those two
Yeah.
separately,
Yeah,
right?
because you would send me reminders for the cat's vaccination or whatever it
Yep.
is,
Yep.
but the cat and the dog would have different renewal dates for the vaccinations. And when you email me, you want to be specific that it's the cat that needs to come for this by this date, rather than just
Yes.
sort of a try and word it loosely that your pet should come for a vaccination. It's like, well, which one is it? Do I
Yes.
bring them both? Do I?
Yeah.
And the same with kids. I mean, nursery is a good environment of that.
Yep.
Preschool, things like that, where you have to communicate with the parent about the child.
Yes. Yes. And it's not like the technology doesn't exist. I don't want my
Mm,
listeners to feel like we're talking about something new. It doesn't exist in a state that's easily adaptable or adoptable, I should say, for the masses.
yeah.
If you take your average Infusionsoft user, Active Campaign user, Entreport, Hub, whatever, just any CRM system, you take your average user, they are not going to be able to use the software that's available that has the parent-child relationship.
Mm,
Mainly, Salesforce is the top one that comes up.
yeah.
Anybody that's attempted Salesforce, I don't care if it's Salesforce for small business, get ready. Just, I mean, you're listen to me. As somebody who is techie, I am techie, and I was on the forefront when I was at Active Campaign of developing the Salesforce integration and making sure that it worked well. Listen, man, I'm glad I didn't have hair. I really am because you talk about an outdated API. Salesforce is it. The
Mm,
way that it pulls data in and you have to map it to properties and objects and it it will hurt anybody's mind unless that's the sole tool that you're in.
mm,
So you do have those certified Salesforce consultants. That's all they do. Go find somebody like that.
yeah.
You're gonna use Salesforce because you're not gonna be able to go at it alone. But why, Peter, should that type of functionality, since it's needed? I mean, you're talking about a pet owner. How many people market to service-based businesses that have
Mm.
this child-parent relationship, and yet they don't have this functionality which draws them elsewhere? So it sounds like this was one of the key components that you wanted to build Macanta around. So do you have is Macanta more focused around objects and then their ability to have relations to one another?
Yes. So on a slightly more technical level, everything in Macanta is driven by the data objects and the
Mhm.
contact's relationship to those objects.
Mhm.
Now, on a base technical level, the contact in Macanta is also an object, but
Yep.
it's the only one that's there by default. And you can't delete that as an object type. But
Mhm.
you can then go and create whatever objects you want, object types beyond that, and then specify, well, okay, this particular object type, these are the available relationships for it. And
Yeah.
that then drives everything because that drives the automation. All the automation in Macanta is based around the state of the data in an object and with the intelligence of the contacts who have a relationship to that,
I
which
love
then
it.
which then allows you to say, well, okay, it's always the object that drives the automation. It's not the contact.
Yes.
So the object, let's say, for instance, we can take a simple sales example, opportunity.
Mhm.
If you go and create that as your object, you can then have relationships to it of the prospect, the sales agent, the sales manager, the sponsor, whatever it needs to be.
Mhm.
And therefore, when the status of that opportunity changes, I can say, okay, the status has changed. So I want to create a task for the sales agent, send an update notification to the sales manager, and send a confirmation email to the prospect. Now, that all only happens with one piece of automation because it knows about the relationships that's involved, and it's driven by that object. And in the same way, you can then also say, well, okay, if on an opportunity again, next action date is today, and so let's say, for instance, if the next action date is today and the opportunity stage is still new opportunity, create this task, send this notification,
Yes.
whatever it needs to be, with the intelligence of the relationship. And everything throughout Macanta, the workflow boards, everything works with that relationship intelligence in it, to drive everything.
And I wanna say this, again, the important part is making this functionality tangible.
Yeah.
And for proof of concept, as if you needed it, I know you saw it as an Infusionsoft certified partner, but I'm starting to see this object language pop up in
Mm,
other CRM software now, right?
yeah.
Like I think I was in Active Campaign the other day and I saw that Calendly is now an object on the
Mm,
contact record. So
yeah.
what does this mean, everybody, that we're saying? Some of you are not familiar with CRM systems and managing your contacts through your marketing, sales, and beyond. The most basic form of a relationship between a contact and, let's say, a child is an opportunity. So you may know them as deals. I think
Yeah.
that's the most common terminology being used amongst the industry now. So a contact, depending on your software, may be able to have multiple deals. However, those deals, again, depending on your software, are not able to move independently of the contact.
Yeah.
So when we first say, okay, I have this object that's connected to the contact, but the object needs to go through things.
Yeah.
At the date of closing of the deal, I want to update some fields or I want to tag the deal or do something. The main contact will still have access to such data,
Mm,
but the contact doesn't need to go through that.
yeah.
The object itself does. So when we understand that, now we take it one step further. Now we're in Macanta land. We take it one step further and say, my object doesn't have to just be a deal. It could
Yeah.
it could be any relation to the original contact.
Yeah.
And now what it does is it really opens up the door for a more customized experience, because I can send objects through automations and the contact through
Yeah.
automations independently, but still connected.
Yeah. And it is, and for us, it's that customizability that's the key. So Macanta is designed, and everything in it is designed to be like a box of Lego.
Mm.
And it's, well, okay, what do you want to build? Is it a square house with a flat roof? Are you building Starship Enterprise?
Yeah.
It's entirely up to you. But we just, so our process always, when a customer comes to us and said, oh, can we add this feature? Can we make it do X? We always take a step back and say, okay, what Lego blocks do we need to facilitate so that this customer can do X, but everyone else can do their version of that and enhance it for them, rather than hard code objects or hard code automations or anything like that. It's important for us that it's as configurable, and that's why for us it's the CRM adapts and grows as your business does, rather than you fitting your business into the software that someone else has designed. Because
Yeah.
that happens a lot. There's the part of CRM and software where the object relationship is used a lot tends to be in industry specific solutions, because
Correct.
they need that. So let's say legal claims management. But the problem there again is you then have to run your business based on how someone else ran their business and designed the software.
Mhm.
And then customizable, configurable, there's limitations. Whereas for us, it's very much mold the CRM around your business. And then as your business grows, changes, the needs, whatever it is, you just swap out blocks, add bits on, move bits away, whatever you need to do, rather than sort of trying to say, okay, what are we going to need in 2 years' time? And let's find a tool that can do it now. I pay for it all along. We don't use it, and then we'll use it later. Um,
Yes.
it's just start small if you need to, or start complex depending on where your business is.
Yeah, and to help people understand this, I love this topic, by the way, Peter. This is a very hot topic with a lot of the SaaS founders that I'm working with,
Mm,
trying to identify the architecture of their contact relationship
yeah.
management systems and how you go about it. And I want to give this example, and I'll continue to give these because I want the listeners to really hone in on it. One example is when you have multiple meetings required to close a deal,
Mm,
right? So those meetings now show as events.
yeah.
And each one of those events can go through automations, send reminders, get fields populated and updated.
Mm,
But the good thing is when you go to that contact, you see every event that
yeah.
person has attended. Now, why is this important to everybody who hasn't used the CRM? Because before then, the event you'd have to, the closest you could come to is the event would be a custom field name,
Yeah.
right? And then you'd have to put another custom field with that event date. And now, if you have multiple events, you've got multiple custom fields,
Yeah.
multiple dates. Now, this thing is starting to get unmanageable.
Yeah.
When
And
I've
it's
got
also
tags.
you'll then put in a situation where it's like, well, okay, well, how many meetings do I need to allow for? Four
Yes.
works
Yes.
perfectly until someone needs a fifth, and then you have to say, okay, which of my four past events am I overwriting
Yep.
or
Yep.
now managing manually because I don't have the custom fields?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So I see, of course, I'm in the industry. I'm
Mm,
solving these things, so I get it. But I can't help but think there are so many applications for this
mm,
beyond, right? Just the basics of opportunities. It also makes me think of nonprofit because the nonprofit sector probably has the most parent-child relationship
yeah.
environments as possible. Just real quick, do you find that nonprofits are finding your software for those reasons? And do you offer, like nonprofit pricing and all of that for that?
Yeah, so we as of yet we don't really have a big cohort of nonprofit,
Hmm.
and pricing is such a strange thing, that it's, if someone is in that position, it's really just a case of talking to us. I
Yep.
mean, we took, as a company, we signed up to the 1% pledge, so 1% of all revenue goes to charities that we've chosen.
Yep.
Which is a big driver and motivator for us, because it's like, well, as our user revenue grows, directly proportional grows the amount of
Yes.
impact we can have.
Yeah, I actually saw that, Peter, on the website. In the footer, it says "doing good,"
Yeah,
and I clicked on it, and you can learn more about the initiative. But go ahead.
yeah. So that's what we're doing there. But we do find, so it's so varied, the application. We've got a charity here in the UK who, it's quite strange that we need a charity for it, but they provide outdoor play sessions for kids.
Mm,
And for me growing up, we just played. We didn't need someone to arrange
yep.
it for us. But
Yep.
but they have, for instance, their system is set up that obviously you have the contacts with all the parents, you have the sessions with the kids who attend the sessions, and then you have the child profiles where the parent has a relationship, because the parent has no relationship to a session because they don't attend. Only the kids have a relationship to that, but then the parent and the child have a relationship to the profile.
Yep.
And that works well. And again, with a child and parent, we do also in the system allows them to link the parents and the children directly. So regardless of any other objects that's going on, direct contact to contact relationship. So you can see if I'm in the system, you can see my two daughters. If you look at the daughter, you can see who the parents are and who the sister is. And
Yeah.
that sort of three-dimensional links that you get in here works quite well for those kind of clubs and groups. But it's quite interesting. I always find that, as if I always describe it, it's a bit like reading the Matrix, because, and Dan Kennedy always said this about marketing, and I think that there's a lot of it that comes into the structure of businesses as well, is that your business is not different and your business is not too complex.
Mm,
And if you can just step away. So I've now described, so far we've looked at opportunities or deals where we have the sales agent and whoever we have. We've got these sessions where we have the kids and the facilitators, but then that's actually no different other than labeled to a legal claim with the client and the solicitor and the file handler connected, or an electrical contracting job with the client, the engineer on site, the apprentice. They're all structurally the same thing. We just label them differently within our own businesses, and that's one of the things that we at least feel is great about Macanta, is the fact that you can have all that functionality and you don't have to put up with, well, so for instance, in most CRMs, it would be called a deal or an opportunity.
yes.
You sort of think, well, actually, no, it's not an opportunity, but I'm forced to use that functionality and that terminology and the labels and everything that's in there,
Yep.
and try and map it to my business. Whereas for us, it's much more a case of, well, just map the software onto your business rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and I have to say, one of my biggest gripes with any type of CRM software is the fact that they allow you to capture information, but don't allow you to easily see it.
Mm,
Right? It's you can create a form and capture the information, and it's on the contact record. But if I want to see information across many contacts,
yeah.
right? Or if I want to quickly just see different variations of how my data looks, it gets really hard. So when we start to take an object oriented approach to this, now when I do go to a contact record, I do have a more comprehensive view of what's going on easily, right, Peter? Because now from Infusionsoft and other platforms fall into this too. Left to other means, it's tags and custom fields.
Yeah.
And most people don't have a consistent naming convention.
Yep.
Most people are not very structured in their creation of tags and custom fields.
Yeah.
And before you know it, they're looking at the contact record cross-eyed, trying to determine, what is it that I'm looking at here?
Mm.
What took place? The tags aren't time stamped. The custom fields aren't grouped. And
Yeah.
even
or they've been overwritten with something
overwritten.
else. Yeah.
So Peter, we also insert not just ability to easily view what's taking place, but maintain that data.
Mm.
If I have one field for most recent webinar, right? I lose that data the minute somebody registers
Yeah.
for another one.
Yeah. Rather than creating another instance of the webinar registration object, which
Yeah.
then tells me which one you registered for. I can add the source if I collect that information, whatever it is. And you can then see, okay, this person has they've registered for 4 webinars, only attended 2 of them, and however you want to run that.
Yes.
Um,
Which is another great example. I want to jump in here. You got me going, Peter. I'm trying to calm down. You got me going. I want the listeners to envision what Peter just said. You're running webinars. You run multiple webinars. And now that these events are as objects on the contact record, what if everyone just dream with me? Instead of having to tag every attendee, having to do all this, I can search for my contacts by event name,
mm,
date, and status.
yeah.
Peter, is that not everything that you usually have to manually program into your CRM system? You have to
Yeah. Yeah.
create the non-attendee tags because the status doesn't sync over. But
Yeah.
if it were an object and the object was webinar, I want to see all my contacts who have this object and then this status of that object. It seems to me so straightforward. And it seems like the logical next step for the CRM industry, yet nobody is really taking this step. I see you doing it in Macanta. Why? Why are you not following the norm? And what is the risk here with
Well,
you trailblazing this path?
yeah. Why we do it is
Mhm.
because there's sort of 2 things at play. The one is we hit our own head against the brick wall of having to deal with contacts and tags enough times when, as Infusionsoft partners, when dealing with our customers, that it was just the whole time, well, there has to be a better solution. And then solution created. The other side of it is also that every single feature that Macanta has today is there because a user asked us, can we make it do this? We
Mm,
didn't sit in a dark room and think, okay, if we build a CRM, this is what it should have.
yeah.
And it is just so, it was quite interesting in February 2021, when Macanta as a standalone platform was a year old, I sent an email to the team and to our customers of everything that Macanta launched without in February 2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was a list like 86 features that it didn't have when we launched. And those are all features that have subsequently been requested because we can't come up with all the good ideas. It's our job to take the good ideas and translate them into the DNA of Macanta.
Yeah.
But it's our users and our customers who come up and say, well, actually, it would be really good if this, and this is the use case why. And it's quite interesting. Macanta, we took quite a strong decision at the start. There are no tags. The concept of tags doesn't exist.
Wow. Whoa, Peter. Well, hold on. Hold on. Hold on. That so I think I experienced like a form of trauma when you said that. I was just like, no tags, no, So all right,
No.
I'm back. Okay. Continue. Why no
So,
tags? This is very
so,
interesting.
so the reason for it is partly the naming convention issue and the fact that people just make up tags on the fly, and 6 months down the line, no one knows what they mean, what they trigger, where they fit in, or anything. It just becomes unmanageable really quickly.
Yeah.
And the other issue is, so I can tag you that you registered for a webinar. But when you register for a second webinar, unless I create a new set of tags for every webinar I run,
Yep.
I can't tag the fact that you've attended a second webinar.
So
And
difficult.
and
So
and
difficult.
therefore there's always this push and pull with tags. And in the Infusionsoft sort of ecosystem there, they became known, at least to the people I speak to, you either have data tags or you have trigger tags.
Mm-hmm.
Data tags is the thing, oh, you registered for a webinar. It doesn't do anything. It just records the fact that you registered for a webinar because we've run out of custom fields.
Yep.
And trigger tags is to start or stop a campaign sequence,
Mm-hmm.
to move you around in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because Macanta's automation doesn't rely on the contact having a tag or anything, and because we don't have an arbitrary number of field limits per contact or per object or anything, there's no reason to have data tags, because you just, if you want to store the information, you build the data object and then you store as many of those as you like, and your data object can have as many fields as you need it to have. So there's no restriction there on the, because it's also with that information you can export and you can do something with, or whatever. And then the automation, so we don't have a campaign builder like Active Campaign or Infusionsoft where it's the flow and the sequences and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's all to do with the state of the data. And does the data meet, for us, we call them trigger conditions.
Yep.
It's like, does it meet the condition paired with an action? So let's say, for example, I want to send an email to a prospect and create a task for the sales agent if a new opportunity or lead is 3 days old and the opportunity stage is still new opportunity.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, normally what you would do in that case is I drop into a sequence, wait for 3 days,
Yep.
and if a tag is applied, I get
Yep.
pulled out. If it's not applied, it runs.
Yep.
Now, there's a second compounding issue. What if there are two opportunities with me connected to them? I can't be in it. I as a contact can't be in the sequence twice.
Yep.
At the same time. So what our automation does is if you can describe it to someone sitting next to you, you can tell Macanta how to do it. So in the example, we just say, if the opportunity stage is new lead and the date created is -3 days, take this action. There's no sitting behind a timer. We just check, are there opportunities that meet those criteria? Take this action. Because what that means is if on day 2 you change the stage from new to active, it doesn't meet the criteria anymore. So it'll just be ignored for that particular automation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how everything works. It's just if this, then that. So if you can say to someone, if nothing's happened to that opportunity for 3 days, send an email to the prospect and create a task for the sales manager. Or you can tell Macanta to do exactly the same thing.
Yep.
And that's then, Macanta then just says constantly, are there new opportunities that meet that criteria? Take this action.
Yep.
And
do
it that way.
I love it. It reminds me of database structures.
Yeah.
Because a lot of databases operate like that, where you can define the criteria, and then once it does, it goes into a certain portion of that database and move over. How do you all give visual insight into things that are upcoming in Macanta? So I can see, when you're saying that, I could see a case where perhaps tomorrow a deal meets that condition, and maybe 2 days later something else is coming. Do you guys kind of have that forecast? And I remember when I was using Infusionsoft, and you would go to the contact record, it would show you what campaigns they were in, and it would show you what actions they've executed, and then which ones were coming up and upcoming, so you can rectify anything or do some checking.
Yeah. So because of how our automation runs, nothing is really upcoming in that sense, because in the Infusionsoft example, you would see there's a 3-day timer, then there's an email, then there's a 2-day timer, then there's an email. Well, we don't have that, because we don't know whether the data is going to meet the criteria in 3 days' time. So you're not sat in that sequence. But going back to your database example, on a strict technical level, when you create automations in Macanta, these trigger conditions, you're essentially creating SQL queries.
Yes.
That we then just run in the back end. And you do the same for widgets on the dashboard. So you can say, okay, our automation is if the stage is new lead and the lead creator date is -3 days, so 3 days ago. That's when the automation's going to run. But I want to try and catch those earlier. So I can build a widget for the dashboard that says, show me all the deals or leads where the stage is new lead and the date created is -2 days.
Yeah.
So it'll show on my dashboard a day before the automation happens. So I can decide to get in touch and try and avoid that
Oh,
automated
I
message.
see. Yes, yes, yes.
Because the way we look at the dashboard widgets is, depending on what they are, your job is either to get the number down to 0 or to get the number as high as possible. So
Yeah.
deals closed, I want to get that number as high as possible.
Yep.
New deals, I want to get that to 0 every day, because that means I've engaged with them and they're now an active deal.
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't want that number to sit there and drive up.
Yep.
So that's really, and again, you build those queries for the dashboard. You just go in and say, okay, for this widget, I want to see leads that meet this criteria with all your and or rules that you need. And then you can also then, from a business owner perspective, you can then decide, okay, when someone logs in, do they see all the deals, or do they only see their own?
Yeah.
So the ones that me as a logged in user has a relationship with. But the sales manager can log in and see everyone's deals.
Yeah. That makes sense. Tell me this, as you're describing it, I can literally visualize it, right? And I'm seeing being able to come in and say, okay, I've got this upcoming. When it comes to the creation of these objects, the creation of these
Mm.
events, how do you guys handle that? Am I able to integrate webinar software now and it will create those events for me? Are you guys doing something different through API?
Yeah, so the data object types
Yep.
of, let's say, webinar, you just go in and create. And you just go and say, I want this field and this field and this field. And
Mm.
you get to design the interface. So 4 columns, sections, subsections, depending
Oh,
on how
wow.
complex your information is.
Yeah.
And then you can use either, we've got an open API, or you can use Zapier or Integrately or Integromat. I think it's now
Mhm.
called Make.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it is.
you can use any of those platforms to. So we've actually got Zapier and Integrately integrations. We're busy building a Pabbly one. So you can then, for instance, pull webinar registrations in. So one example that we put in place for a client is they create the event in Macanta with a presenter and an event admin,
Mhm.
and then that does a couple of things. It creates the event in Event Espresso via an API, and if the event type is webinar, it also creates the event in GoToWebinar and brings the registration link into Macanta. So Macanta then sends out the email saying, hey, here's a new event, register for this webinar. If anyone then clicks on the link and registers in GoToWebinar, they get connected with an attendee relationship to the object in Macanta.
Got it. I
And
got it.
then if they don't show up, then you can just update their status. If it's a live event, just go, yeah, attended, didn't attend. And that can then drive other automation around those statuses.
Interesting. And when I create that event or that object, I should say, I guess there's probably a selection where I can say create multiple events instead of updating the same one, right?
Yes, yeah. So you can decide. So for instance, it's just whether you have an ID or not. So you can
Yep.
update it if you have the event ID, and then everyone gets connected to the same. But
Yep.
let's say, for instance, that works for a webinar, one to many. But
Yep.
let's say, for instance, you want to run your podcast bookings, guest
Mhm.
bookings. For that, every time someone books to be on your show, you want to create a new one,
Yes.
because you're not having 20 people on the same
I
podcast.
got it. And technically, the idea is different.
Yeah,
So the event or object would be different,
yeah,
just like a contact when the
yeah,
email is different, a different
yeah,
contact object is created.
yeah.
Oh man, that is I tell you, so everybody, I intentionally stay ignorant to a lot of the software when founders come on because I want to be wowed and excited, just like you are as you're listening. I have to say, man, I really do think that this is the way that all CRM software should go. It's got to be object oriented. Dare I call it object oriented automation?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Dare we say that? I know my software developers are like, "Wait a minute, we've got object-oriented code. Can you do that?" But I think this is it. I think, Peter, we're officially putting object-oriented automation on the map, and I believe that it needs to be something adopted because it just makes more sense the more comfortable and the more activity that's taking place
Mhm.
online, it has to be captured this way.
Yeah,
It tags, custom fields, they're good, but in the form of tracking events, they're outdated.
yeah.
They really are. So I think that there's a decision to be made. And again, I see some software companies trying to make that decision. It's refreshing to see that you're here. Peter, this was great, man. I thank you for coming on. I was hoping this would be good, and you exceeded my initial hopes. If anybody listening wants to find out more about Macanta, and they're like, look, wait a minute, this is what I've been looking for. I need this. I need this today. Where should they go? Is there a webinar, free trial? Where do you want them to go?
Yeah, so you can, couple of things. You can go to the website, macantacrm.com, and get in touch with us there. We've also, you can join the Facebook group. I do a lot of what we post in there mostly are live builds. So
Okay.
we do offer a service where we do the configuration for people, and I do those as a live stream to the Facebook group because then you really get to see it from inception, how we get from, well, this is the business to this is the structure in the system and this is what it does and how it works. So just there, get in touch with us that way, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite easy to find. And just get in touch. Happy to help. Happy to have a chat.
All right, great. Well, we've got macantacrm.com. That'll be in the show notes for everybody to connect. Peter, again, thank you for coming on to the
Oh,
podcast
thank
and
you.
giving us such wisdom, guidance, knowledge, and thank you for the software, man. Thank you for the software.
Oh,
Your
thank
blaze
you.
trail. So
Yeah, that's great. We'll keep pushing.
yes, please do. Please do. And I'll see you online.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.